To the south and west, the 1st Canadian Corps pushes toward the major cities where millions face starvation. Arnhem falls after 2 days of intense house-to-house combat on April 12th. The 5th Canadian Armoured Division races 50 kilometers north to cut off German forces around Apeldoorn, liberating that city on April 17th. Dutch resistance fighters provide intelligence on German positions, helping Canadian units bypass strong points and advance more rapidly.
Welcome back to another reaction video. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for clicking on this video. Yep, my name is Onel and this is my lady Tekla.
Of course.
And today we are reacting to the Canadian liberation of the Netherlands.
Ooh.
Yep, the video is actually titled what Dutch people think of Canada after the liberation of the Netherlands.
Oh my god.
Yep.
That's so amazing.
This video was recommended by so many people and it took me unaware because I had no idea Canada was doing this. And but this is Canada. And surprises is what comes with knowing Canada.
Definitely.
So ladies and gentlemen, let's click and hear what these magnificent people of the Great White North
have to say.
Yeah, they're always doing a lot, but they don't yap much about it. They hardly talk about what they do. You just need to find out. So let's find out.
Today.
September 1944. The Netherlands.
Hold on.
September 1944. The Netherlands. 5 years into German occupation, and the country remains locked in the grip of Nazi control while Allied armies surge east through France and Belgium. The port city of Antwerp in Belgium has been captured almost intact, but the waterway connecting it to the sea runs 70 kilometers through Dutch territory still held by German forces. The Scheldt estuary winds through flat lowlands, protected by dikes, fortified islands, and thousands of German troops dug into positions they have spent months preparing.
Seriously, I would like to give you this one up front. This is an AI voice. We try to look for videos that do not have copyright claims on it, and this is the one that we found. And I hope that these are facts, and please watch to the end of the video and give us corrections and just answer some of the questions we have to answer. And so yeah, bear with us with the AI voice. As long as it's giving us facts, let's go. We love you, Canada.
So much.
Without access to Antwerp's port, Allied supply lines will choke and the advance toward Germany will stall. The task of opening this estuary falls to the 1st Canadian Army, and what follows will become one of the most brutal campaigns in Canadian military history, leading to 8 months of fighting that will cost more than 7,600 Canadian lives.
Jesus.
Under the command of General Henry Crerard, the 1st Canadian Army is an international force unlike anything Canada has fielded before. The 2nd Canadian Corps forms its backbone with the 2nd and 3rd Canadian Infantry Divisions and the 4th Canadian Armoured Division.
Please, I have a question. These photos we're seeing, are they real footage from the war or what? Because it looks real.
Yeah, it looks like they're actually the real footage from the war, right?
Wow.
But alongside them fight British units, the 1st Polish Armoured Division, and at various times American, Belgian, and Dutch soldiers. It is the largest army that has ever been under the control of a Canadian general, with more than 450,000 men at its peak strength. They have already proven themselves through the blood-soaked beaches of Normandy and the grinding battles through northern France. Now they face terrain that seems designed specifically to punish attacking forces. The Scheldt estuary is not a battlefield that favors the offense. On the south bank lies the Breskens Pocket, flat polder country below sea level, enclosed by dikes and prone to flooding. The Germans have turned it into a fortress. To the north, the peninsula of South Beveland extends toward the heavily fortified island of Walcheren, bristling with coastal guns and concrete bunkers. The land is so low that Allied bombers will eventually breach the sea dikes deliberately, flooding the island to drive out defenders who have burrowed deep into positions they believe impregnable. Fighting here means advancing along narrow roads atop dikes, while German machine guns fire down from higher ground. It means wading through flooded fields in October, cold, water up to your chest, carrying 60 pounds of equipment, while mortars rain down and snipers pick off anyone who tries to climb onto dry land. The assault begins in early October 1944. Canadian and British forces attack simultaneously on multiple fronts, trying to divide German attention and prevent reinforcement. The 2nd Canadian Infantry Division pushes across the Leopold Canal toward the Breskens Pocket, crossing water obstacles under heavy fire. The 3rd Canadian Infantry Division advances up the South Beveland Peninsula, fighting for every kilometre against troops who know that losing this ground means losing Antwerp, and losing Antwerp means losing the war.
And there's where you're about to get the Canadian spirit unleashed.
Yeah.
When you push these people to the limit and when you give them no option, they create options. Use those new options. Yeah. That's what I'm beginning to know about these Canadian people. Holy smoke. They are kind, are polite,
Caring.
and unapologetically assertive. Yeah. When they say, we are going through here, then they are going through there.
Fighting for every kilometre against troops who know that losing this ground means losing Antwerp, and losing Antwerp means losing the war. The battles develop into a grinding nightmare of small unit actions in mud and water, where visibility drops to meters in the rain and fog, and where the simple act of moving forward requires crossing open ground swept by interlocking fields of fire. At the Leopold Canal, Canadian infantry launch assault boats into the water under cover of darkness, paddling across while tracer fire cuts through the mist. Men who make it to the far bank find themselves pinned down in soft earth that provides no cover, unable to advance or retreat. Those who stay in the boats become targets for German machine gunners who have the crossing points pre-registered. The casualties mount with brutal efficiency. Companies that cross at full strength are reduced to platoons within hours. Platoons become squads. Yet the Canadians keep crossing, keep pushing, keep forcing the Germans to give ground, one blood-soaked metre at a time. On South Beveland, the advance becomes a test of endurance as much as combat skill. The peninsula narrows to a few kilometres at points, channeling the attack into killing zones the Germans have prepared with methodical precision. Every farmhouse becomes a strong point. Every cluster of trees conceals a machine gun nest. The German defenders know this land intimately after months of occupation, and they use that knowledge to extract maximum casualties from every Canadian advance. Mortars fall with devastating accuracy. Snipers wait in positions that offer clear fields of fire across the flat landscape. The weather turns worse through October, rain drumming on helmets and soaking through uniforms, until there is no such thing as dry or warm, only varying degrees of wet and cold. By late October, the Canadians have pushed through South Beveland and reached the island of Walcheren. This is where the fighting reaches its most intense phase. Walcheren has been transformed into a fortress island, its coastline studded with concrete gun emplacements housing heavy artillery that can range across the entire estuary. The Germans have flooded parts of the interior deliberately, creating another water obstacle that limits approach routes. Allied planners make the decision to use bombers against the sea dikes at Westkapelle, breaching them and allowing the North Sea to pour through. The bombing takes place on October 3rd, and the effect is immediate and catastrophic. The sea rushes in through gaps in the dike, flooding the low-lying center of the island and driving German defenders toward the perimeter. But the men defending those perimeter positions are not ready to surrender, and they fight with the desperation of soldiers who know they have nowhere left to retreat. British commandos assault Walcheren from the sea on November 1st, landing at Westkapelle under fire from coastal batteries that sink several landing craft before they can even reach the beach. Canadian forces attack overland, fighting through the flooded terrain in amphibious vehicles called buffaloes that churn through the water, carrying infantry who dismount under fire to clear fortified positions one by one. The fighting continues through the first week of November, house to house and bunker to bunker, until finally, on November 8th, the last German defenders surrender. The Scheldt is clear. Minesweepers can begin the dangerous work of clearing the channel. On November the 28th, the first Allied convoy enters Antwerp harbour, and the port that will sustain the final push into Germany is finally operational. The cost has been staggering. In 5 weeks of fighting, the 1st Canadian Army has suffered nearly 13,000 casualties, including more than 6,300 Canadians killed, wounded, or missing. Some units have...
That is costly. That's extremely costly. That's why Canada scares me, because you never get to hear about
all of this.
Like, people don't get to hear about this. Like, they're not like really advertised out there. Like, yeah, look at what we can do. Look at what we did.
Look at what we did.
Nobody really knows about this. But they've done a lot. And if you just wipe off the dust off the surface, and you will see a lot under that.
Imagine losing your own people just to save
a country that's not even your country.
That's the thing.
Like, Canada was so far away, across the ocean, but over here in Europe, liberating a country, liberating a city. Yeah.
Been reduced to half strength. The Regina Rifles, the Royal Hamilton Light Infantry, the
Regina is the capital of Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan.
Really? I don't remember.
Are you sure? No. But it's a town. It's either in Saskatchewan or in Manitoba.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. And then Hamilton. Hamilton is in... I've forgotten. Is that not in Ontario? No, they say that the Regina Rifles. I mean, that's a regiment or it's a battalion.
Missing. Some units have been reduced to half strength. The Regina Rifles, the Royal Hamilton Light Infantry, the Calgary Highlanders, all have left their dead in the mud and water of the Scheldt. For the survivors, there is no parade, no celebration, only the knowledge that they have accomplished something vital, and that many friends will not see the end of the war. With the Scheldt secured, the Canadians take up defensive positions along a front that stretches more than 360 kilometers from the German frontier south of Nijmegen to Dunkirk on the North Sea coast. This is the winter holding phase, 3 months of patrols and small clashes, while Allied planners prepare for the spring offensive. It is a period of relative quiet compared to the Scheldt, but quiet is relative in war. Sharp fights erupt at places like Kapellsche Wehr, where German paratroopers defend with the same fanaticism they showed at Monte Cassino. The Canadian positions come under artillery fire regularly. Patrols clash in the darkness between the lines. Men die in this supposedly quiet period, and the reinforcement problem that has plagued Canadian units since Normandy grows worse. Behind the political debates in Ottawa, where Prime Minister Mackenzie King resists conscription, while Defence Minister Ralston argues for its necessity, Canadian battalions in the field operate below strength. Companies that should number 120 men field 70 or 80.
Please, I have a very silly question, but please just answer. Why did Canada join the war?
How could you say it's silly? I think that's a very good
Maybe
question.
I should have known. I don't know. But why did Canada? I think the
It's a
United
very good
States
one.
joined the Second World War. I think Japan attacked America in Pearl Harbor. And I think that was the initial push of the US to join the army, join the war. And then the German attack of American supplies in the Atlantic, I think so. So I don't know why the Canadians joined. Like, were they just joining to support Allied forces? Right.
Yeah, or actually, like,
They were
what's the
attacked too.
actual reason?
Yes. So tell us if they were just joining to support or Canada was actually attacked. Please, we'll be happy to learn from you. Thank you, Canada. Let's keep moving. Our silly train is passing. Our freight train.
Replacements who do arrive often have incomplete training, learning their combat skills in action rather than on training grounds. The veterans who have been fighting since D-Day are exhausted, their ranks thinned by casualties and combat stress. Yet when February 1945 arrives and the spring offensive begins, these understrength battalions are expected to attack once more. Operation Veritable launches on February the 8th. The 1st Canadian Army is tasked with clearing the Rhineland, the narrow strip of land between the Maas and Rhine rivers. This is German soil now, and resistance is fierce. The Germans have constructed 3 defensive lines through this area, the Siegfried Line running through the Reichswald forest being the most formidable. They flood the lowlands by destroying dikes, creating yet another water obstacle for the Canadians to overcome. The weather refuses to cooperate, with February thaw turning the ground into deep mud that bogs down tanks and trucks, leaving the infantry to advance on foot through conditions that seem designed to break the spirit. The advance through the Rhineland is a grinding struggle that continues into March. Towns like Kalkar, Udem, and Xanten become household names in Canada as casualty lists are published in newspapers. The fighting is as brutal as anything seen in Normandy or the Scheldt, with the added psychological weight of knowing the war is nearly over, making each death seem even more wasteful. Yet the Canadians push through, clearing the Germans from the Rhineland and driving them back across the Rhine. By mid-March, the west bank of the Rhine is in Allied hands, and the path into Germany is open. But even as Allied armies cross the Rhine and drive deep into Germany, a massive pocket of German resistance remains in the Netherlands. More than 120,000 German troops, including remnants of the elite 1st Parachute Army, still occupy the northern and western parts of the country. Behind their lines, Dutch civilians are dying. The hunger winter of 1944 to 45 has brought the population to the edge of catastrophe. What began with a German embargo on food transport in retaliation for a Dutch railway strike has evolved into mass starvation. Official rations in the cities have dropped to 320 calories per person per day, barely 1/8 of an adult's daily needs. People are eating tulip bulbs, sugar beets, and anything else remotely digestible. Tens of thousands have already died, and millions more face the same fate if liberation does not come soon. The 1st Canadian Army receives orders to clear the remaining German forces from the Netherlands. In late March and early April, Canadian divisions sweep north and east across Dutch territory. The 2nd Canadian Corps, commanded by Lieutenant General Guy Simons, tackles the northeastern Netherlands and the approaches to the German coast. The 1st Canadian Corps, newly arrived from Italy and commanded by Lieutenant General Charles Fulks, drives into the western Netherlands where Amsterdam, Rotterdam and The Hague remain under occupation. The Canadians advance rapidly where they can, sometimes covering dozens of kilometers in a day when German resistance crumbles. But where the Germans choose to stand and fight, the battles are as hard as any that have come before. On April 13th, the 2nd Canadian Infantry Division reaches Groningen, a medieval university city of more than 150,000 people swollen by refugees from the south. The city has been turned into a fortress, its inner core surrounded by a wide canal with only 12 bridges providing access, many of them destroyed or razed by the defenders. German forces inside number approximately 7,000 men, a mix of Wehrmacht units, Luftwaffe personnel manning anti-aircraft guns, Kriegsmarine sailors and Waffen-SS troops, including Dutch volunteers, who know they face execution if captured. The command structure is poor, and these units have never trained together, but they occupy good defensive positions, and they are determined to hold. Major General Bruce Matthews, commanding the 2nd Division, makes a critical decision. Artillery and air support are forbidden because of the civilian population packed into the city. The Canadians will have to dig the German.
You see a responsible army. They are not supposed to carry out airstrikes or artillery bombardment of the city because, of course, airstrike in the 1940s was not accurate. Plus, bombs don't care if you're a civilian or you're a soldier.
Yeah.
Yeah. In a small place
Once
like that,
it hits you, you're going down.
you're going down. And so for them,
And
just
then,
because you want to remove a mosquito from somebody's head, you don't have to use a hammer to take it away. As you take out the mosquito plus
and
the
then
person.
the person's head.
So that's very responsible, right? They know their opponent is in a city, but there are also civilians there.
Yeah, and then also there was something that I learned in school that when you bomb a place, right, it can kind of leave a particular disease, maybe affecting children that are being put to bed.
Yeah, that comes with atomic bomb, but with
Yeah,
normal bombs, but it does
atomic
not.
bomb.
Yeah, but normal bombs, it's just normal. It's just that in 1945, this is really like different because back then soldiers were really like, you are so angry with these people that you just want to do the worst possible thing to them.
You can.
But now you have civilians in that city. You just have to
So
now
you have to rethink about
your
what
own
you want
strategy.
to do. Yeah, you have to strategize again.
That's responsible. Unlike other armies today where they just go into cities regardless of civilians and just throw the bombs in there, Right. Yes, that's very irresponsible. Extremely irresponsible.
Clock it.
Out using infantry and tanks, accepting higher casualties to protect the very people they are trying to liberate. The battle begins on the 13th and immediately becomes a brutal house-to-house struggle. Canadian infantry from the Royal Hamilton Light Infantry, Le Régiment de Maisonneuve, and the Calgary Highlanders move through narrow streets under fire from snipers and machine gun positions in upper-story windows. Sherman tanks from the Fort Garry Horse provide close support, their main guns blasting through walls to clear strongpoints. But the tanks are vulnerable to Panzerfaust fired from close range, and several are knocked out in the narrow confines of the medieval streets. The Canadians adapt their tactics as the battle progresses. Small teams combine infantry and armor, using coordinated movements to clear buildings systematically. Flamethrowers prove effective against fortified positions, the psychological effect as devastating as the physical damage. The Germans fight back with everything they have, including 20mm anti-aircraft guns fired horizontally down streets to sweep away advancing infantry. The sound of combat echoes through the city day and night, punctuated by the crash of artillery hitting targets on the city's eastern edge, where Canadian gunners work to prevent German troops from escaping toward the coast. By April 16th, after 4 days of continuous fighting, the German garrison commander recognizes that further resistance is pointless. At noon, he agrees to surrender. Over the next day, more than 5,200 Germans lay down their weapons and join their 95 officers in prisoner-of-war cages. The 2nd Division has suffered 43 killed and 166 wounded. 110 Dutch civilians have died in the crossfire, caught between the army trying to liberate them and the army trying to hold them hostage. 270 buildings have been damaged or destroyed. Yet when the shooting stops, the people of Groningen pour into the streets to celebrate, climbing onto Canadian tanks, throwing flowers, embracing soldiers, weeping with relief that 5 years of occupation have finally ended. To the south and west, the 1st Canadian Corps pushes toward the major cities where millions face starvation. Arnhem falls after 2 days of intense house-to-house combat on April 12th. The 5th Canadian Armoured Division races 50 kilometers north to cut off German forces around Apeldoorn, liberating that city on April 17th. Dutch resistance fighters provide intelligence on German positions, helping Canadian units bypass strongpoints and advance more rapidly. But as the Canadians approach Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and The Hague, concerns about flooding bring operations to a halt. The Germans still control the dike systems, and Allied commanders fear they will flood the entire Western Netherlands if pushed too hard, drowning the very civilians the Canadians are trying to save. On April 28th, negotiations produce an extraordinary agreement. The Germans agree to a truce that allows food to be delivered to the starving population behind their lines. The following day, Allied bombers drop 510 tons of food supplies over Dutch cities, the bomb bay doors opening to release sacks of flour and canned goods instead of high explosives. Dutch civilians paint messages on their rooftops in large white letters. Thank you, Canadians. On May the 2nd, Canadian trucks begin rolling through German-controlled territory.
I just kind of love the fact that they are so appreciative.
Thank
You
you,
know, the fact that they
Canadians.
were throwing flowers to the Canadians for what they've done to them. That was some kind of showing that they are really,
Imagine that.
really happy. And
Imagine that
after
you're
5
flying
years,
above. Imagine that you're flying above a city and then you see like "Thank you, Canadians" written on the roofs of the houses just to appreciate you. A starving population,
Yeah.
and they deliver them food through airdrops. Yes, sir. That is
Respect.
Canada. That's Canada at this Canadian Pro Max.
Oh,
The love of Canada is the beginning of happiness.
Rooftops in large white letters. Thank you, Canadians.
Thank
On
you,
May the
Canadians.
2nd, Canadian trucks begin rolling through German-controlled territory, carrying 1,000 tons of food directly to distribution centers in the cities. The German soldiers watch the convoys pass, knowing the war is over, even if the formal surrender has not yet been signed. May 5th, 1945. The village of Wageningen. General Charles Foulkes, commanding the 1st Canadian Corps, sits across a table from German General Johannes Blaskowitz. The surrender document is signed at noon. All German forces in the Netherlands lay down their weapons. 2 days later, on May 7th, Germany formally surrenders at Reims in France. May 8th is declared Victory in Europe Day. The war that began on September 1st, 1939, is finally over. For the Dutch people, liberation brings scenes that will be remembered for generations. Canadian tanks roll through Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and The Hague, surrounded by thousands of civilians who pack the streets despite warnings to stay clear. Young women kiss every Canadian soldier they can reach. Old men weep openly. Children who have known nothing but occupation for their entire conscious lives see their parents smile for the first time. One teenager who witnesses the liberation of The Hague describes it years later, the memory still vivid. As the Canadian tank came nearer, there was a big hush over all the people, suddenly broken by a big scream, as if it came out of the earth itself. People climbed onto the tank, crying, running alongside the tanks and jeeps all the way into the city. The war diarists of Canadian regiments record the day with a mixture of professional detachment and obvious emotion. The Hastings and Prince Edward Regiment notes that tough going resulted from the cheering and crowding of thousands of liberated Dutch people who showered bouquets of flowers on the troops, adding with tongue-in-cheek humor that a good-looking soldier had to use his weapon to beat off the girls, and many a fair maiden's kiss was forced on the boys. The months following the surrender become known as the Canadian Summer. More than 450,000 Canadian troops remain in the Netherlands as occupation forces.
450,000 Canadian troops in the Netherlands.
Yeah. Like, seriously?
There are a lot of Canadians out there. Jesus Christ.
Wow.
And it's possible that some of them are still would have been like in France, Italy, or in other parts of Europe. And then this 450,000 was only in the Netherlands alone. How many Canadians served in this war, bro? Why? I'm so not happy with myself that I do really underestimate Canada sometimes. Yes, I do sometimes. Like, I was just like, okay, fine, probably they had about like 50,000 troops in there, or maybe 20,000 or something like that. 400,000 troops.
Yeah. Wow.
That is the population of big cities.
This
Big
is surprising,
cities.
I swear. This is so surprising.
Helping restore order and providing food and medical care to a population that has endured 5 years of brutality, followed by months of near starvation. Canadian military kitchens feed tens of thousands of civilians daily.
That's typical of
Canadian
Canada.
medical units treat
They don't
malnutrition cases and diseases that spread in the aftermath of famine. Canadian engineers work to repair infrastructure that has been systematically destroyed. The presence of so many Canadians leads to nearly 2,000 marriages between Canadian soldiers and Dutch women, creating family connections that will link the two countries for generations.
Oh my God.
2,000 marriages.
This is so amazing.
Brothers
right?
went to liberate the
then-
country,
After liberating the country,
came with some kids and wives.
yeah, they found love.
That's weird.
They found love.
The women were like, nah, these Canadian men are so handsome.
We can't let them go.
We can't let them
again.
go.
We need them.
We need them. I love that.
We have to get them father our children. Wow.
The cost of 8 months of fighting has been severe. More than 7,600 Canadian soldiers, sailors, and airmen have died in the liberation of the Netherlands. They lie buried in cemeteries scattered across the region, from Adegem in Belgium to Hainberg in Germany. The Bergen op Zoom Canadian War Cemetery holds 480 bodies. The Grosbeek Canadian War Cemetery near Nijmegen holds more than 2,300. Every grave represents a Canadian who will never go home, who died fighting to free people they had never met in a country most had never heard of before the war. But the Dutch remember. In the decades that follow, the bond between Canada and the Netherlands grows stronger rather than fading. Every year, the Netherlands sends 20,000 tulip bulbs to Ottawa, a gift that has continued since 1945, creating the Canadian Tulip Festival that draws hundreds of thousands of visitors each spring. Dutch schoolchildren adopt Canadian war graves, tending them with care and learning the names of the men buried there. Veterans who return for liberation anniversaries are treated as honored guests, sometimes mobbed by grateful crowds even in their 80s and 90s. The Dutch...
This is how you treat allies. This is how you treat friends, not belittle their efforts, talk smack about them.
Actually, we are talking about allies. My Bible study in church, the title is Having the Right Ally. Yeah.
So
You're
what did he tell you?
surprised. Eh?
So what did he tell you about having the right ally?
So, like, having the right ally is like having the solution to all your problems. I mean,
Yeah.
it makes you see hope in despair, opportunities in challenges, and then what again? Like you see light in darkness. Yeah, so having the right ally is like it actually helps each other.
Right.
Yeah, you sacrifice for each other even without benefit. Yeah, that's what it tells me.
I see. You guys are doing geopolitical religion.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's nice. And it's very clear, extremely clear. You treat allies with utmost respect because those people who lose their sons and daughters for you. And
Telling you.
those people did not have to. They would have just stayed in Canada and said, yep, we are Canadians. There's no war. There's nobody trying to occupy us here.
So
we're okay.
let's just relax.
Fight
or
over
let's
there.
just, yeah,
Right.
maybe just watch them fight on televisions.
Yeah. But they sacrificed over 7,000 of their sons and daughters for this. And so many people lived with the scars. These are the ones that died. Some people were permanently deformed.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Especially the deformed ones.
And so others lost their livelihood. So it takes a toll and it costs money. Right? It takes money. Some children grew up without their parents because of that. The cost cannot be measured. So you respect allies, not just belittle them and talk smack about them, treat them like enemies and treat enemies like friends. You know what I'm talking about.
Dutch government awards Canadian veterans special medals of recognition. Streets and squares bear Canadian names. Memorials stand in towns across the country, recording the dates of liberation and the units that fought there. On May the 5th each year, Liberation Day in the Netherlands, ceremonies take place at Canadian cemeteries and memorials. Dutch families who were children in 1945 bring their own children and grandchildren to meet the aging Canadians who returned, creating living links between the present and the past.
Yes,
They
sir.
tell stories of what it meant to be liberated, of the first food deliveries, of the kindness shown by young Canadian soldiers who gave away their rations to starving children, of the feeling that life could finally begin again after 5 years in darkness. The liberation of the Netherlands stands as one of the defining campaigns in Canadian military history. It demonstrated the capability of Canadian forces to conduct complex operations across difficult terrain against determined opposition. It showed the willingness of Canadian soldiers to accept higher casualties in order to protect civilian lives, fighting through cities without the artillery support that would have made their job easier, but would have killed the people they came to save. It created a relationship between two nations that endures into the present, built on sacrifice and gratitude, on the memory of what Canadians were willing to do for strangers an ocean away. The question asked at the beginning has its answer written in those 7,600 graves, in the tulips that bloom each spring in Ottawa, in the Dutch children who place flowers at Canadian headstones, in the bond that has lasted 80 years and shows no sign of fading. Canada spent 8 months fighting for another country's freedom because that is what was needed, because millions of civilians face starvation and death, because the right thing to do was also the hardest thing to do, and because the young men of the 1st Canadian Army, far from home, chose to pay the price that freedom demanded.
They choose to pay the price that freedom demanded, to sacrifice thousands to save millions.
Exactly. Oh my God. I'm so grateful.
There's a song they call Speechless. Yeah, I'm speechless.
Canadians,
I
you
don't know how
people
to.
are so good.
I don't have adjectives to describe y'all. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you so very much.
We respect you. Always be happy.
Always.
Thank you for watching our videos and being on this channel. Thank you for
See
being
you.
Canadian.
Thank you.